Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Erickson TV. Curtis here with Lauren. Hello Lauren.
Hey everybody.
Hey Lauren, in this age of, there's a lot of pessimism out there.
Right.
And not just from, people talking to the people, we hear from the media on a daily barrage. I heard you found some positive news for a change.
That's right. Today I'm going to talk about my favorite subject, optimism.
Okay.
So the United Nations recently came out with a report on global poverty. And I was very surprised. I knew that global poverty has been reduced, but I was very surprised to learn just how much global poverty has been reduced and how widespread the reduction is. So the United Nations has basically two definitions of poverty. One is their definition of extreme poverty,
Sure.
and then the other one is what they call just sort of the higher definition of poverty. If I get too specific about what those definitions mean, it becomes a little bit difficult because you run into the issue of purchasing power parity. In other words, that $1 in a developing country buys more than $1 here buys. But these definitions of poverty are, I think, mostly what people would think. Extreme poverty means you're basically on the verge of maybe you're just not going to make it at all,
Right.
And you might not be able to buy food and that sort of
You can't
thing.
even put food on the table.
Yeah, exactly. So the percentage of the world's population that lives in extreme poverty in 1981, according to the UN's definition, was 52%. That's over half.
Okay.
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot.
As of 2010, it's dropped to 20%, which is a pretty...
That's a huge percentage.
Yeah, that's a big decrease. In other words, in the last 30 or so years, there's been a bigger reduction in extreme poverty. There's been almost as big a reduction in extreme poverty as there has been throughout nearly all of human history. And certainly there has been a bigger reduction than there was up until, I'd say, about 1900.
Okay.
So for the whole of human history up until 1900, we did less to reduce poverty than we managed to do in the last 30 years. Now, up until like maybe the late 1990s, when people like me would talk about this stuff, someone could reply, yeah, but almost all of that happened in China. And it's still true that China has been the kind of the leader,
because their economic engine has grown.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Maoism just didn't really work all that well in China, but in 1981, 77% of China's populace lived in extreme poverty, and that's dropped to, by 2010, 12.5%.
Okay.
But this reduction is now not just happening in East Asia, China and surrounding countries.
Right.
In South Asia, for instance, the reduction was 61% of people in South Asia lived in extreme poverty in 1981. That's down to 31%. And now it's happening in sub-Saharan Africa as well, although the reduction is much slower. But in sub-Saharan Africa, this is a story you're going to hear almost nowhere. That same sort of rapid economic growth that happened first in China, then in India, well, it's now happening in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in a lot of countries that are not resource rich.
Right.
And it's especially happening because they're trading with each other so much. So even though the reduction in poverty hasn't started up yet, the rapid economic growth has. Now, this is not a reason to go out there and put all of your money in Chinese stocks or Indian stocks, or to try to search out stocks in sub-Saharan Africa. What this is about is this is the kind of thing that is a real economic story that influences real people's real lives, and as a result, you're never going to hear about it on the news.
Right.
They're just not going to talk about this because it's now becoming commonplace. It's a real story, and it's also a story about, granted, China isn't exactly rich yet, but someday all these people coming out of poverty and starting their own businesses and creating economic innovations, this is going to create global economic growth no matter what we do here in the United States, whether we like it or not. So for those of us who are globally invested, this is unambiguous good news.
It's great news because besides the innovation and the small business development, it also creates more customers for business.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Those people out of extreme poverty now become new customers and they can buy more goods and services. Well, that's great news, Lauren. Thank you for watching this episode of Erickson TV. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
See you next time.